It began with a headline that looked ordinary, almost mundane: protesters detained after Capitol March. But the story behind the words spiraled into something that no news ticker could capture. Across the country, millions of dollars had been donated to a patriotic fund, intended to support those jailed during the uprising. No one knew how much of it had vanished, or who was benefiting. Detectives on the case felt the pulse of the nation in their hands. The trail led them far from the chaos of the streets and into quiet suburban neighborhoods. It led to a house with white siding and black shutters, where everything appeared perfect from the outside: lawns trimmed, cars washed, children waving at neighbors. But inside, secrets festered like mold behind wallpaper. Detective Marissa Holden had grown accustomed to anomalies masquerading as ordinary life. She'd been on the cybercrime unit for nearly a decade, tracking stolen money across invisible digital highways. When she first encountered the Patriot's Fund, she expected routine fraud. What she found instead was a labyrinth of coded messages, offshore accounts, and silent, calculating actors who moved as shadows in broad daylight. Her team traced the first discrepancies to a series of bank transfers that seemed innocuous individually but, when aggregated, painted a picture of systemic theft. The funds had been collected ostensibly to pay for legal defense and bail for protesters. But months passed. No one received a dime. And no one asked questions, until now. Among the donors, outrage bubbled, amplified by social media. Thousands demanded accountability. "Where did the money go?" became a chant in comments, forums, and late-night news panels. Investigators knew the money trail would eventually lead somewhere deeply personal, somewhere that would defy expectations. The financial trail curved into the unlikeliest of places, a quiet cul-de-sac in Ohio. At the heart of it stood Allison Warren, a 42-year-old accountant. On the surface, she was every bit the suburban matron: blonde streaks in brown hair, always perfectly coiffed, soft green eyes that sparkled when she smiled, jeans and casual sweaters that blended seamlessly with neighborhood fashion. She volunteered at the local school, baked for PTA events, and had 2 children. Jake, 12, and Lily, 9, were models of ordinary childhood. But behind her polished exterior, Allison hid layers that even her closest neighbors could not imagine. Her kitchen doubled as a home office for managing funds that didn't belong to her. Piles of documents, spreadsheets, and ledgers lay neatly stacked yet carefully coded. To Allison, numbers were a language, a tool to reshape ideology into tangible influence. The Patriots Fund had become more than just a financial operation. It was a mechanism to reward loyalty, manipulate belief, and enforce compliance. The investigators didn't yet know the full scope. The millions of missing donations were only the tip of the iceberg. Allison's network of financial deception extended into real estate, shell corporations, and a series of anonymous cryptocurrency accounts. She had crafted a life that looked mundane, familiar, and benign. But beneath it, she was orchestrating transactions worth more than most of her neighbors could fathom. Marissa's team began monitoring Allison's communications. At first, they noticed the subtle signals: encrypted emails, messages hidden within online donation portals, and transfers timed to coincide with public announcements to avoid scrutiny. Every detail had been calculated with precision. The accountant mother had built layers of plausible deniability, and her suburban life was the perfect camouflage. Yet cracks began to appear. In one slip, an offshore transfer was logged incorrectly, leaving a trail that, when cross-referenced with other data points, pointed unmistakably to her home. A neighbor mentioned unusual late-night deliveries, which matched timestamps on suspicious bank activity. The investigators realized they were on the verge of uncovering not just financial fraud, but a network of radical support that blurred ideological and criminal boundaries. Allison's motivations were complex. She claimed patriotism, devotion to a cause. But there was a darker undertone: manipulation, greed, and a willingness to exploit ordinary people for extraordinary control. It was an ideal storm for investigators, an intersection of ideology, finance, and familial concealment that demanded careful navigation. The investigation intensified. Marissa coordinated with federal financial regulators, tracing transactions that spanned continents. Patterns emerged: donations diverted through multiple shell accounts, small contributions aggregated into massive offshore sums, and even fraudulent bail payments used to fund extremist recruitment in other states. Allison's family life remained a paradoxical cover. She cooked dinner, helped with homework, and cheered at school soccer matches, her smile sincere and comforting. Her neighbors gossiped about her perfect household, never suspecting that their friendly baker and PTA volunteer managed millions in stolen funds and directed them toward radical causes. Her ability to compartmentalize was remarkable. Each smile, each conversation, each neighborhood appearance was rehearsed yet effortless. To Allison, the duality was normal. To investigators, it was chilling. Here was a woman whose very ordinariness concealed extraordinary crime. With the case closing in, Allison's composure began to fray. She started moving funds more aggressively, attempting to erase digital footprints and obscure transaction records. But each attempt was countered by Marissa's team. The FBI became involved, and surveillance intensified. Agents watched as Allison tried to transfer money via cryptocurrency, only to find their monitoring disrupted her carefully orchestrated plans. She realized that exposure was imminent. Panic replaced the calm, calculating demeanor that had defined her for years. Marissa reflected on the irony. The very suburban stability Allison had cultivated, lawns, PTA, soccer games, was what had initially shielded her. It had lulled neighbors, investigators, and even her own children into believing she was ordinary. Now, that ordinary life was a cage, trapping her as the net closed. The arrest came on a rainy Thursday morning. Allison stepped out of her home, hands raised, still wearing the cardigan she had worn during countless dinners and PTA events. Flashing lights reflected off wet pavement. Marissa watched as the layers of suburban normalcy peeled away, revealing the truth beneath. In court, the extent of her deception became undeniable. Millions in donations had vanished, funneled into shell companies and extremist networks. Her neighbors, friends, and children's school community were left in shock. The story dominated headlines for weeks, a chilling reminder that radicalization and crime could hide behind the most ordinary faces. Allison faced decades of legal consequences. Yet the investigation also sparked national dialogue about accountability, financial oversight, and the subtle ways ideology can infiltrate everyday life. The Patriot's Fund became a case study, a cautionary tale about the intersection of ideology, finance, and domestic life. Marissa Holden returned to her office, the hum of computers and the scent of stale coffee welcoming her. She reflected on the ordinary facades that hid extraordinary crime, wondering how many other Allison Warrens existed quietly behind closed doors. As society debated oversight and radicalization, one lesson was clear: appearances could deceive, and vigilance had to be both broad and intimate. Money, after all, was more than currency. It was ideology made tangible, and in the wrong hands, it could shape a nation in secret.